We are live and Memorex and all the rest of it. Welcome to Journey of an Aesthete podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Hampton, and we are always excited when Alexandra Carter comes back for an episode. It's always a treat, always interesting. Painter, mom extraordinaire, resident of California, and many other things. New England, what would they say, expatriate of New England, or what would the term be?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a New England expat.
New England expat, which relates to today's episode in some ways, right?
Definitely.
Definitely. So this is, of course, a series I coined or invented called Travels with the Dark, which can have different meanings. It could mean, so thus far in my podcast, it's been involved sometimes, real life crime, Manson, things like that, and sometimes representational or fictional artwork that I would label as Gothic. Some what people don't say that so much as they say horror. And this is an example. You and I have covered so many things, so many movies, everything from The Substance to new version of Suspiria, and you requested that we talk about a filmmaker, Robert Eggers, correct? And this was your request. It would not have been my request, but it is your request, so we could talk about that. Two films you want to focus on, not his Nosferatu, his interpretation, Nosferatu, and a film that made a really, really big splash when it came out, really big at the time. I remember because I'm friends with Anna Biller, and she made a movie called The Love Witch, I think in 2015, somewhere in there, but right at the same time, I think.
Yeah.
Eggers made a movie called The Witch, which is a much more, austere, kind of severe, melancholic picture about so-called witchcraft and paganism and Christianity in New England. So these are big topics. These are both big films. You also said that you wanted to discuss New England related matters, because I think that relates, right? Because wasn't really sure. Again, when we get together, there's always so much to talk about that it's we kind of have to edit and pick and choose what we're gonna discuss, because
right.
it's big. I mean, we'll get to some of it hopefully. But did you want to talk about when we first saw these pictures? Because I like to start. So I guess you're a fan and I am not. I'm not as crazy as you are about the filmmaker, and we could talk about that if you want to. We just finished up the Oscars, and so that's the feeling of having watched the Oscars, Sinners, one batter after another, PTA, and of course Chloe Zhao's Hamnet. These were all really, I feel, really good films.
Yeah.
Ironically, for a lot of us PTA fans, this is our least favorite PTA movie.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not a big PTA fan.
I'm a really big PTA fan. I think I'm such a big PTA fan that I would say Licorice Pizza, Inherent Vice, those two films alone blow away every film we've ever discussed.
Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't even say that I'm not a fan, because I haven't seen enough of his movies, and I actually did really like Licorice Pizza. So, but I honestly didn't like go head over heels for One Battle After Another the way so many people did. So,
it's a good film, but there's a specificity to that picture. In terms, again, the thing I'm always complaining about is too much politics, too much preachiness in art in general, which Eggers indulges in, which is one of the things that I understand that needs to be that way. But I get tired very quickly of that. There was a time in my life in which I was more open to that. I would say 1980s, 1990s. Probably it's because I'm 58, and when you experience something a lot, anything, a style of music or something in drama, I think that sometimes we have a journey or story with something. And there's a time in which we feel something never is too old if we really love it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other things that we don't love as much, but we might love it for a moment because it speaks to us then. And a lot of the things that are in these films we're discussing now are things I'm very tired of. On the other hand, they speak directly to our moment, which is probably why I'm so tired of them. I'm sort of like, well, you're making artwork about what we're seeing in the daily news every day. And maybe I want something totally opposite from and unrelated to the urgency of the moment. And also, again, I have 20, 25, 30 years. The case of the Dracula myth, I saw Frank Langella play Dracula in 1977 as a child. I saw, I grew up with Jack Palance's Dracula. I was a fan of George Hamilton's comedy version of Dracula, which is my favorite one. Still love at first bite. When I was 7 years old, one of the very first movies I watched on television, creature feature, was Bela Lugosi's, Todd Browning's wonderful reading of that story. Not to mention, I went to the Tampa Theater and saw Klaus Kinski's Nosferatu, the Herzog film. All of those are films I like. I don't love them because I don't love the horror Gothic genre in general. It's one of my least favorite genres, but I do know it very well. I went through a period of time when I was a Wes Craven sort of student, and I've done episodes. I did one episode on Wes Craven. So I guess when I do gravitate towards horror, it's very anti-fantastical, anti-mythic, ultra-naturalistic, Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I like sort of the unstylized, which is the complete opposite of the stuff we're covering today and what Eggers does.
Yes.
I tend to like highly stylized works of art. So a good example of a very stylized work that I love is La La Land, which is every bit as stylized as The Witch or Nosferatu, but it takes place in the present, and it's costumed, and it's much closer to a Jacques Demy film. So there's a hopefulness, and there's a romance and eroticism, which I appreciate, and in that film. And it's the antithesis of the sort of heteropessimism and the goth of the stuff we're doing today, which and so I guess it's a matter of beliefs and philosophy and temperament, right? So, but I come at these films, with all of this to the table. So I see what Eggers is doing. It's not out of alienation or ignorance. I get, so it isn't that I don't get what he's doing. It's a question of, do I like it and want to see it, and what do I think is important? On the other hand, I'm a complex person, and I've talked for too long. We're gonna have you talk for 45 minutes. But one second. What I'm saying is that this is a part of my brain that I could sort of, or a hat I could take off and enter into the world, your world or this world. I can do that just like I did with the substance and really go deep into it. And we'll do that. And I do have a couple of questions because these may sound like sort of strange questions, but there is a geographical cultural component, which I'm not as aware of as you are. Like, what does New England mean? What is the connection between Massachusetts and religious history, which is important. And it's certainly something Eggers thinks about very seriously. There's so much to say. So anyhow, I first saw The Witch, I guess, in the theaters around the time I saw The Love Witch. And that's probably when you saw it, right, in theaters, right?
I did not see it in theaters. I was living in London at the time, so I saw it just on my TV at home in my apartment in London. And I was awestruck by it. I think for me, requesting to talk about these really comes from a deep interest in the genre of folk horror.
Right.
And about you is you are open to talking about things that you're not like necessarily super interested in. So I'm glad that you are open to talking about these.
Well, it's more than that, Alex. So it isn't the case that I'm not interested. So I'm
You
interested
don't
in
love
that.
them,
I don't love them.
right?
So there are things in life that I hate. There are things in life I dislike. There are things in life that I like but don't love. That's the territory for me that I'm in now. Then there's the things I love and really love, which I at the outset, the PTA films and
Right.
whatever else. And so it's more in the like approachable. It's approachable. I'm not against it. I see its value, and this course is a lot there. So that's just to clear that up. It isn't as if I'm.
Yeah, I understand that, and I feel that I usually feel that way every year about like a lot of the Oscar movies. Is like I like them a lot, but I don't love them, and that's true a lot of the ones this year. Although I absolutely loved Hamnet, and that I think it's to our discussion too, just in terms of a place. Yeah.
Oh, that's where we meet. We're totally unified on that. I mean, but
Yeah,
I've been a fan of her filmmaking all the way back to the movie about the horse. Do you know her first picture? Whether she's done, or she did a movie about horse riding or cowboy, and then of course Nomadland, which is one of my favorite pictures of that year. So I've been a fan of hers. And she learned a lot from Terrence Malick. That's an influence on her. And
I'm a huge Terrence Malick fan. Again, so I think it really circles back to why I chose this to talk about, because I think what's interesting about these Robert Eggers films, is they're being like, they are very singular in their vision, and they're very they want to be historically accurate and geographically accurate, and I really appreciate that. In the sense that this folk horror genre, it really has this this dedication to a sense of place and what came before in that place, and how that place haunts us to the present day, and what these stories really mean to our core identity and our upbringing, in my case. So I grew up literally, right where The Witch is supposed to be set. Like I think he actually filmed it in Canada, but it's supposed to be taking place in Plymouth County in Massachusetts. And I definitely get that feeling. And I love the fact that he used text from primary documents from that era, from the 1600s. And, I grew up going to Plymouth Plantation as a kid. It was 10 minutes away from where I lived. It was, and, he definitely referenced Plymouth Plantation in this movie. And, I just think it's fitting for you and me to talk about too, because we literally met in Boston many years ago. Another place that has this just extremely rich, extremely fraught colonial history. So
I mean, there were so many things I loved about The Witch, I have to say. So there's so much to talk about. We're talking about geography, but also it's very unusual in film. He did something in The Witch that I haven't seen many filmmakers do, and I'm going to give him credit. It's from clear, I like The Witch much, much more than Nosferatu.
Me too.
The Witch really gives you a sense in cinema of, I don't know how else to put this, the stakes involved with religious belief or faith of whatever kind. It doesn't matter really the kind, but sort of the you know what I'm talking about? The kind of when people believe that deeply. I mean, there's a lot of arguing about religious doctrine, and sometimes it's quite complex. It's like different interpretations of just Christianity, and also being drawn to what's going on in this woods, and is it the devil or is it not the devil, and the teasing. It's so The Witch is such an extraordinarily complex, in the highest sense, very religiously literate, religious history literate film, and everything to the end when she's looking up, the gaze. That's a common motif in Eggers' films, is the Usually it's a female figure looking up and looking into the distance. And it's not, as you know, the witch ends that way. This kind of yearning for something, yearning for a solution to a problem, or yearning to be healed, or yearning to be liberated from, I guess, what I take to be I have to choose my words carefully because I'm not anti-Christian. What I take to be a tragic turn in Christian history,
Mhm.
And it's interesting. It's sort of he captures that in this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those layers are really interesting in that, these people have immigrated from a country for their religious beliefs.
Yes, for
They
freedom.
get there, and then from the beginning of the movie, we find out that even the Puritans aren't pure enough for this one family. He
Mhm.
exiles himself because
Yeah.
he doesn't think they're doing it right.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating, right? To
Yeah,
think
because yeah.
how
Well,
dedicated he was
yeah.
to his ideas. Yeah.
Well, it shows how it shows precisely how ununified Christianity ever. I mean, Christianity's always been beset by internal conflicts and sectarianism, almost so much so that when it was run by the Roman Church, it's almost like that's the ideal situation in a way, because at least with that, as bad as, and again, no fan of that, but at least with that, you don't have sect upon sect and splinters and people, families being torn apart over very, very, as you said, this film makes clear, very minor. Well, it's not minor to the people arguing about it, but very small interpretations of Scripture and Christ. It's crazy how extreme. Well, this tribe over here doesn't read Matthew the way we read Matthew, and doesn't interpret, the Gospels the way we interpret it. And so we're going to break away from them and sometimes even kill them, or uproot ourselves and leave, travel thousands, travel across oceans and continents just to have our own, what we feel is the best form of Christianity. But that's crazy. But this film really gets you inside, as close as a film can, wouldn't you say, what it's like, to the stakes of that.
Yeah. And the ideas of like religious ecstasy and rapture are definitely engaged with here when Caleb, the young son, is overtaken, whether he's possessed by the devil but he's quoting all these Christian verses. And I think that's really interesting. And then I think the other thing is the ambiguity in the end of whether, like, do we think she was empowered by leaving, her like Christian background and becoming a witch and signing a deal with the devil, or has she succumbed to something truly evil? I think it really is ambiguous, which I think is nice. I think that's what The Witch does really well, because I remember that first time watching it, leaving and being like, wow, that had such an impression on me in terms of the sense of place, the mood, but I don't really know what happens to her now. Like what happens when she wakes up the next day? Does she
I don't. Yeah, I just don't ask any of those questions. I guess I'm curious, partially because it's not real, it's a work of fiction, and partially because we're not even 100% sure that what's occurring is occurring. So we're not even showing up. Yeah. So there's that problem too. So yeah, I take it that there is something in the woods, right? Yeah. And I do assume that thing in the woods is not positive. I just do. So I guess, do I have a dog in the fight? I mean, I don't hate to put it that way. I mean, I'm not a pagan. I'm not a neo-pagan. I'm aware. I'm aware of all the, you can list 1,000 good things that the pagan world did. But I think for each of those 1,000 things, I can mention 1,000 awful things. And some of them are even on display in this very movie, a lack of boundaries and, and imposition of things in sexuality, which are quite dark, and which I see Christianity is trying to liberate us from, at least initially, right? trafficking in women and girls and all that, which is one of the things Christ was fighting, Jesus Christ was fighting. That's important too. But yet there's this kind of mystical herbalist, some kind of desire to escape the patriarchy of the same Christianity and sort of, and it's not really clear, right? So the lack of clarity. So what's good about The Witch, though, is that it's never so unclear that you don't know what's going on. You can follow the picture, you see what she sees in the woods, right? You see the alternatives. And you're right, we have to make our own conclusions, I suppose, right? Just like you do. Yeah.
Whereas I think with Nosferatu, it's pretty different. But I think that there is still this they come together in this sense of the unknown, right? The unknown being the sense of horror. And when he leaves to go to the woods, it's a similar feeling of when they've been exiled from their community. The woods is a character of its own. And I think that's the other thing that resonates with me, having grown up on a cranberry farm and being surrounded by cranberry bogs and wilderness. That rings so true for me. And it's the same wilderness, right, as the wilderness in The Witch. And it's the source, for time and time again, for so many fairy tales and folklore, that's where it originates, right? Is in the woods a lot of the time.
Did you spend an enormous amount of time as a child in these woods and around woods?
Yes.
And
tons
so I would say that our backgrounds are completely opposite. Growing up in Manhattan, New York City, around Broadway shows and big buildings, never seeing an animal or couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
So maybe in a way I have to have your background to love Eggers. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I think
is he a rural filmmaker? And that, not rural. Is he kind of dealing with the country and rural life?
Yeah, for sure. And I think The Lighthouse is really similar too. In that one, it's the ocean, right? It's the ocean and the isolation that is the source of fear. And both of those things were very much at play in my life growing up. So I think, and as I was truly born an artist, I think I always wanted to be an artist. So I was constantly craving city life, and that cultured atmosphere. Yeah. But I think that now that I'm, older and I have this perspective, paying homage to those roots and realizing how much my soul is tied to those roots and tied to that place is really important for me. And so much so that it's in my work. Like, my work really engages with cranberries and with the sense of that place where I grew up in a new way. I'm using cranberries to talk about fertile female bodies and fertility and motherhood and just the kind of explosive creation of the body. But using that, I think, and thinking about folklore storytelling, that's what brings me back to films like this, because they're so heavy-handed that's why I love horror. They're so heavy-handed in the imagery and in the referencing of old stories, be that mythology, fairy tale. The Lighthouse itself references.
The very thing I dislike is what you love. You love the foregrounding and the heavy-handedness of it.
Yeah, I like the maximalist kind of heavy metaphors, and I think that is where that's the juice for me.
Right.
And more and more so. It's so funny because when I became a mother, I remember hearing a lot of people say that when they became parents, they didn't like horror movies anymore. They were too rough for them. And I always wondered if that would happen to me. And
Yeah.
it definitely did not. Like, if anything, it
So
made
you
me
went
more.
the opposite direction.
Yeah, opposite for sure.
You were like, sign me up. I want to rewatch The Babadook.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I did. I totally
It's a great
rewatched
film,
it.
though.
Yeah.
The Babadook's a great film. I
Yeah,
love
it
The
is.
Babadook. You have it. But that is the kind of the ultimate sort of fear, right? The ultimate Gothic interpretation of motherhood, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. I mean, I thought it was about motherhood the first time I watched it, and that was before I was a mother. When I rewatched it as a mother,
Yeah.
I thought it was much more about grief. Like,
Yeah.
really a lot more about grief than it was motherhood.
Yeah.
I think, having the perspective now of like how we talk about motherhood in films is like very it's more nuanced than I thought it was. And some other movies I thought about asking to discuss with you, but like because there's so many, but there's the 2 motherhood films of the year. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, and Die My Love. Those were 2 very interesting takes on motherhood. So, and Hamnet too.
Well, Hamnet, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Hamnet also has a love of. Well, Hamnet has a kind of a purity in it, by which I mean a kind of a very uncomplicated, transparent regard for herbs and plants and medicinal herbs and trees and just the natural world. And the natural world is just something simply beautiful. That's almost makes it like a whole different kind of movie. It makes Hamlet closer to in that sense, it makes Hamlet much more like I don't know if you've seen a Bresson film like Balthazar, and it makes it have in that way nothing in common with The Witch, or even though there's in my view, because of its attitudes and its.
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. I really think that, so one of the ideas in folk horror is this idea of the sublime, right? The sublime within nature. And we think about that in art history, about how like we are so small in the context of this huge, beautiful world and the huge, beautiful landscape. And this is something that really came about, especially in art history.
Oh yeah.
In exploring this country, this huge expanse of land. And I think that is definitely like that. The idea of the sublime is in Hamnet for sure.
Oh, it's like, actually, if we're looking at it that way, then they're similar. Yeah, again, I'm saying what I'm saying is that they share these common features, but their attitude could not be further apart. Could not be further apart, because there isn't in Hamnet this fear or terror, even though those are parts of the sublime. It's a much more use the word positive. It's a positive regard. I mean, I would say almost naive regard, which might come from
for nature.
Well, it might come from Zhao's own perspective as a filmmaker. It could come from anything. It could come from the Irish writer. I don't know, Shakespeare. In Shakespeare, there's so much nature stuff, and it's different. So sometimes, in aesthetic, sometimes you can have the same objects, the same features. But for me, if the attitude is different, that counts for a lot, and makes a different feeling. Now, if you just want to see something talked about, the attitude might be secondary because you've incorporated all the attitudes. And I suppose that's a very capacious way, which maybe is your way of you're taking all these things. I'm not quite as open-minded as you, I don't think. So I'm always aware of Egger'sThe horror auteur behind everything he does. I mean, for example, Nosferatu, the awfulness of this Dracula figure that's not the name. Of course, he's got to change the name or make the name Orlok or Orlok. Just makes him as unappealing as you can make any living being in anything. just ugly. And then even at the very end,
I don't know. That's debatable. I feel like he's like so unappealing, but he's also sexy somehow. I think that is the vibe.
I just do not see that. Maybe for you and other, I just do not see that at all. But I'm somebody that, grew up with Frank Langella and Jack Palance.
Right. I mean, those are, sexy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a no, those two actors, I mean, it's just a world of difference. But I could see, I think, again, it redoes. So Nosferatu is basically flipping the script. It's almost like Egger says, I'm sick of all these movies that spend time on Dracula's feelings and consciousness and life. What about the victims? Is that kind of what, and so the whole picture is of this woman's journey. Forget, it's almost like she's battling the creature, but it's about her story. It's about the guy, Jonathan, going to visit and the real estate. So it's a focus on, on the subjectivity of the victims or the subjects of the poor people that Orlok comes in contact with or puts his fangs into, or whatever you want to say, which is in a sense innovative. I think it's very, I mean, it's, that's a conscious change from other movies, I think.
Is it? Because I feel like, the mistake that I made the first time I watched it was, my husband and I, we were like, well, before we watch Egger's Nosferatu, shouldn't we see the old one, like the first one from 1922 or whatnot?
You mean Todd Browning with Bela Lugosi? That one?
The silent film.
Yeah. Well, that's Lugosi.
Yeah. So we watched that, and it was so good. Right? It's so good. And so then we watched Egger's Nosferatu, and it was so similar. I mean, it was just like, what is it adding to the conversation? I didn't know like his plot was going to be like exactly the same and all that.
For me, as I said, the emphasis feels so different. There's such an emphasis on the young woman, her face, but that one thing is everything. That's what makes it for me fundamentally different from Todd Browning's picture, from the other, even though it's the same plot, and so these little things is what make artwork. So what makes Egger's not a hack and not a committee churning out a horror picture is he cares about that. He decides, I want to put the focus, in a way, she's a lot like the other female character in The Witch. It's like focus on the struggle and consciousness of a woman. That's foreground.
Yeah, and I think that's in his filmography. There's only 4 films, and then there's a 5th one coming in this Christmas. Did you know about that? Werewolf.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be seeing it, but yes.
We'll see. So these 2 films are the ones that have female protagonists, whereas the other 2 are male.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because the other 2, The Lighthouse, so interesting. I mean, there isn't a single, it's just 2 men the whole time.
Yeah, that's
true. Then his blockbuster Viking film, The Northman, was very much, a masculine machismo kind of film too. And so it was really interesting. You're right that these 2 focus so much on a young woman protagonist. And, that's somewhere that I think Anya Taylor-Joy was just magnificent as the witch, as Thomasin in The Witch. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I feel about Lily Rose Depp. I can't decide whether she was really good or overacting, And part of me is really interested because I did listen to some interviews with Robert Eggers, and he talks about how Lily Rose Depp actually trained with a Butoh dancer for this film. And I'm really interested in Butoh. And so I looked up the Butoh dancer, and it turns out she teaches at the school where I went to grad school, which is cool. So there's like this connection of like things I'm interested in that come through his films. And so I think that's another reason that I'm so partial to him. Like, I think there's just so many things that he does that are so intentional and researched, and that ring true for good performance and good storytelling. Now, again, I'm curious. What did you think of the acting in Nosferatu? And
well, my favorite, the best acting is from Willem Dafoe.
Yes, agreed.
But then again, he's an interesting character. His character is interesting, kind of like a Van Helsing type of character, I guess.
Yeah, and he's like an interesting character because he brings together the ideas of the occult and science, and like where those things butt heads at, because he has this medicine background, but he kind of has been, exiled from that background because of his interest in occultism. So I thought that was cool how they engaged with that.
About confronting evil. It's a very interesting, probably the moment in the film. It's almost like the Greek chorus to the audience, that you have to confront things in yourself, and it's pretty serious. It's pretty. It's political, and that's quite a moment, right, where he says that the evil is inside, and that's not the inside and the outside, and the evil does exist, and and also I guess you can't talk about Nosferatu as a movie about the pandemic, actually. So there's that. It's that much more that than a Dracula movie.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, as a movie, Go ahead.
Sorry. I feel like that is another thing that really comes across with his version, is that I think that he was interested in how people at that time actually did believe in stories like this. Yeah. Because it explained plague. It explained this death and destruction that was going on in amongst them, and mass death, and so I think what really comes across in this movie is that Orlok is a representation of the plague. I mean, he literally does bring the plague, but it's like that was the true life version of the horror, right? And
I understand too is that, I mean, for me, given the way how I look at films, because Orlok is so much a living being, a creature, a demonic figure, to me, that does set it apart from microorganisms and viruses. It just does. It isn't like something. So, all those Cronenberg movies, it's, not a person or not a monster. It's always, an accident, a test tube falls over and then everybody gets sick. To me, there's a world of difference between that and this creature, Orlok. So in the film, it's clearly this creature with history that brings this thing. So I guess you could look at it either way, but because again, movies are phenomenological, they're about experiences. So that's what makes it sort of cheating as a film about the pandemic in a way, unless you make Orlok, you could make it, some things I won't say because it would be too controversial, having to do with China or whatever. I mean, you make personify bad things as particular people or as particular countries, right? Mm-hmm. He's following the story, and the story is about the undead and about eternal creature preying upon young women and drinking blood, and that the blood part makes it a scientific thing, right? Makes it plague, but it seems different to me, doesn't it? It's different because if we take that seriously as a cause, right? Mm-hmm. In a lab, so if something comes from a lab, or something comes from a test tube, a country like China or wherever, or a person, a creature, a monster, does that difference matter? Some would say that's a political question, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's, I kind of disagree in that I think that even though he is this other thing besides science, besides the test tube, he still is a metaphor for those things because of the fear that it instills. And I think that's something that Eggers is interested in, is that historically how it created fear. And
if I'm watching a movie and having to listen to his awful voice, which is quite a lot to take for me because I really disliked it, gravelly voice, you can. So I guess what you're saying is that you can just jump right to the metaphor, and are you disavowing are you disavowing the sensory experience of there being a living being doing this, or
no, not at all. And I think that
but that makes a big difference. And understand that there have been so many movies, bad Hollywood movies, and some not so bad, about outbreaks of viruses. And in those movies, it is kind of an inanimate thing. It's not a thing that's really living. It's not a thing with passions. It's not a thing with any kind of voice. It's sort of, we might say dead. I mean, I don't want to, it's microorganisms, right? So I guess all I'm saying, I'm probably going on for too long about, is that to me, there's a world of difference between an upright creature speaking to us and the test tube, but I guess you could say the former could be a metaphor, the latter could be a metaphor of the former. And that's the whole question of how people experience reality in the 19th century, right? Or, and that is interesting because people in the 19th century, maybe, I don't know. You probably thought more about it than I have. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I just naturally think that way when I watch his movies now, because
you're trained into his system.
I think because he's clearly so interested in the historical context, and how these stories were thought about at the time. I mean, that comes across so much in the Witch, right? Not as much with Nosferatu, but because Nosferatu is kind of going back to your discussion of style. It's like so stylized and so like every frame is like a painting, which is beautiful, but it's almost, I don't know, it's just not nearly as affecting as The Witch was. And I find that interesting in terms of yes, I love maximalism over the top.
One of the problems of Nosferatu is he's using new technologies, but he's using old pre-technological film techniques. And it's and that mixture is what I dislike actually about Nosferatu. So sometimes you feel like you're watching AI imagery at times, even though, but yet he talks about Kubrick and lighting by candlelight, but it's not, he's using newer cameras. That because he's using these new digital cameras, right? That changes everything. And undoes, I think, his project of having, what I like about PTA's films, and his films, he really shoots, uses real old technologies like Kubrick would have done. And of course, you would say that's too bright, or too much color. I don't know, but nothing. It's neither here nor there. It's effective. I mean, in some ways, The Witch is more interesting visually than the Nosferatu is more interesting visually than The Witch.
Yeah, it is.
And there's also more. There's just some really beautiful. I mean, it's hard to think of. There's just standout images of a carriage or a carriage traveling, or the long journey to this castle, and
all the archways he goes through, and very, very composed, very architectural.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. I mean, if Nosferatu did not have those things, I don't know. I feel like they kind of need to be there in a way, or they're kind of, right?
Yeah, I think they support also Orlok. Like they support his personality. The whole thing is just dripping with his personality. And it's interesting because Orlok himself, we don't really get a sense of his personhood or like that he is a being. It's more like what he represents, right? We don't really relate to him the way that other Dracula films have been able to do.
Right. Well, that's one of my problems with Nosferatu is it wants to have it both ways. It wants to subject us to a being with this voice. Again, you're probably not as bothered by the voice as I am. We're all different, but it never changes. You have to listen to it. And then it gets really, when they're arguing with each other, remember when the man and the woman, it's the man and the woman against each other. It's very, I call it, I don't know if I call it the Me Too scene or the in a way, right? It's sort of, right. He's like, he's the predator and she's little, it's very heavy handed in that regard. Another problem I have with it, but it makes it a film for our moment. Right. Political aspect to it. But anyhow, you can't get away from the fact that this is very much a male creature, a beast. The very last shot of the film is she dies, she sacrifices, right? And that's, I guess that's how the story goes, but that's really depressing and tragic that this plucky, intelligent young woman dies to save the world, to save, right? If you want to look at it that way, I don't know.
Well, I think we can look at it in another way, right? So I think the whole movie, it starts with her saying that she had a dream that she married death and she was the happiest she's ever been. So we've already set the stage that maybe death is salvation. Maybe death is a place of ecstasy. And
this is the sublimity. The sublimity of Nosferatu.
Exactly.
Eggers is
I think in the end, we can interpret that very last scene of them coming together in different ways. One, it could just be that they're dying together. Two, they could be having sex, and
they are. I assume they are having sex.
Yeah, and I think she is getting off. I think that she is finding a place of ecstasy, of passion, of something that she was not getting in her marriage.
Right.
And and I'm not trying to simplify it that much because it's not even just about her marriage, because the film starts with her communing with him, like contacting him way before her marriage. So I think we assume it's well before she's ever met Thomas. And so she's been kind of in his infatuated with him, perhaps with Orlok, or with this idea of death.
Alex, all that thought, it occurs to me that this makes the picture, and this is a positive, I'm praising the film for this, a lot like The Substance. It just dawned on me.
How?
That kind of, how The Substance has that kind of, I don't know if it's ambivalence, profound ambivalence. It's that this has that too, right? That kind of, I don't know. It's something about it. It's hard to articulate, but you see one of, maybe, does that sound crazy?
I don't know, because I feel like the end of The Substance, she literally is run into the ground. So it's like not a good outcome for her. She's literally mopped up as a scrap of tissue. And I feel, and like she completely explodes. And I don't get a sense of passion or ecstasy from that. I get a sense of
no. That, of course, in terms of the outcome. So if we were comparing them as literal outcomes, they're different, of course.
Yeah.
But it's the ambivalence about how to evaluate reality.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a different viewer than you are because I hate Orlok. I'm not actually literally able. So it's not a picture for me. I'm not able to even entertain that I would even want something like that. So that puts me at a disadvantage. So I'm viewing it more from the outside. It's entertaining. It's very interesting. But in that sense, I'm kind of more anti-Orlok than she is. Right. There's a lot of, and so of course I'm a certain viewer, and and then of course, but it's all good, right? It's all, but there's an
I don't think Orlok is sexy, like in any kind of like cinematic male or female gaze way. I
Yeah.
think he's sexual and very sexual. I mean, the way that he
Oh, so you're
feeds.
making, that's interesting. You're looking at sexual as a basic drive, like as a, you mean kind of are you talking about a drive that's of indifference, that's relentless? Like a chemical drive in that sense of sexual?
Like a primal drive.
Well, that's to say, yeah, primal, it's relentless, it's kind of almost mechanistic. I mean, we don't have to, you know, without adding all the things that some of us think make sex worthwhile on it. Well, I don't know. It's yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. There is a drive, but you're saying that. So you make a distinction between sexual and sexy.
Yeah.
But isn't it possible that the sexual itself could have sexy and unsexy components?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where it gets complicated.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think being covered in maggots like he is in that one scene is at all appealing. I mean, it's there to create complete sense of disgust.
Right.
But it's like when he feeds from Thomas's heart and he literally grinds on his body, like it's like, whoa, like that is.
Well, the movie is not coy, and it's very, very direct. Very direct.
Yeah.
I get it, you know, the more I talk about, the more I like it. So this is interesting. This episode is making me yeah, it's the Nosferatu is getting.
Yeah, I'm just like super interested in how sex functions in films right now because I've been watching Heated Rivalry. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like such an amazing representation of how sex like builds like these characters and really is a plot point in a story. Have you seen it?
I have not. No, I can't see everything.
Yeah, you should watch it.
It's about siblings or?
No, it's about two hockey. It's a gay romance between two hockey players.
Okay.
So, which I never thought would be so amazing, but it is. It's full of joy. It's full of sex, and it's I just like how the show uses sex as a prime communicator between characters and how it builds their characters so much. It's not in there just for fun.
Do you feel the movie Challengers did that? Speaking of sports,
yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good example because the sex in that is again huge plot points and so much about the personality of the characters.
That it is challenging.
But I mean, I think with that, what I love about Heated Rivalry is there aren't women involved in, because there's a whole set of complexity in terms of representation of women in sexual scenes.
Right.
The way that we judge that and the baggage that women have with their own bodies.
Sure.
And what's really nice about Heated Rivalry is that we are avoiding that. Which is so interesting to me as someone, I'm a painter.
As we spoke, that's the very reason I wouldn't like it. Yeah, so I want to film to traffic in that which people don't want to see.
Yeah.
I'm in the opposite. So I'll see it maybe, but the very thing. So the freedom. So again, it's the vices, the virtues that it's like that's maybe I don't know. I've overspoken probably, but again, I can wear two hats. I take your point. It's that's why I like Challengers, is I think sort of Challengers is a movie about heterosexuality,
Yeah. And it's also made by Luca Guadagnino, who we've covered before. So yet another crossover. He made the brilliant Suspiria, which I love so much. But Challengers is quite a different movie from that. But
Yeah.
In any case, still brilliant. And
Rivalry is it's a little bit like The Kids Are All Right. Where, do you know that this film with Mark Ruffalo and Annette Bening? And
I have not seen it.
Oh, so you haven't seen it. Well, one of the main characters is a woman who is in a lesbian relationship, and she only masturbates to male-on-male erotic material or porn, right? And it mystifies everybody in the film. You know, you're a gay woman. Why are you looking at cocks, or why are you masturbating? She says, well, I like the freedom from. Again, it's the very thing you're talking about. I don't have to see my sex on display or judge. It's just the purity of just.
I have seen that movie. You're right, and I think that's what Heated Rivalry reminded me of when I started watching it. I was like, oh, why is this so good? Yeah.
Now,
so yeah, good point.
It's interesting. That was a plot character point in one a comedy with Mark Ruffalo and Annette Bening. Right. And it's almost like they said, hey, why don't we take what somebody said and make a whole movie? So all of the people that made Heated Rivalry only pick up on that.
Yeah.
It's like a fantasy picture for certain audiences.
Yeah.
But, I've seen, growing up as I did in the 70s and 80s, seeing Boys in the Band and I don't, movies like All the Rage, these gay pictures of the 90s, there were a lot of them, Longtime Companion. I remember All the Rage is a movie that interrogates and questions body fitness and in gay culture. All the Rage is about taking drugs or steroids and having a certain kind of body and building bodybuilding culture, and how that, I guess, according to this film, is corrupting gay culture, queer male society, and it's not unhealthy. I mean, it's not a preachy film, but it's addressing that issue. Of course, that's from '97, long time ago. Maybe All the Rage is a movie now dated and anachronistic. So maybe the whole world is into body modification, thinking about the materialists, right? And the hedge fund, the hedge fund manager who, lengthens himself, which is it's like the worst nightmare for the directors of All the Rage, right?
Right.
So that's where everybody's doing body modifications. So
yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, it almost goes back to like our conversations about Cronenberg at that point.
Very much. Alex, do you want to talk about your newest painting behind you?
Sure. Okay. So actually this one is not that, this one's about a year old. I'll get to the newest one, but I think kind of going back to my interest in folk horror, why I love it, why I love The Witch, is this just in the sense of place that's in my work. And so, with this one, this is it's abstracted kind of bulbous forms, but like they hint at the idea of cranberries for me.
They do.
Yeah. And they're red, they're bulbous, and then they become kind of this maternal figure that's then surrounded by these kind of halos of, this is called variegated gold leaf. So it's like a kind of multicolored metal leaf. And then the child at the bottom.
Child.
Yeah.
Well, look at those are circles. Gold circles.
Yeah.
It's almost like astronomy. It's almost astronomical, or like
right. Yeah, it definitely has that kind of orbit feel. And the title of this one is The Tender Engine. I really liked that.
Beautiful. That and that's newer, right? That's
yeah. It's from 2025. Then I've got some very new ones. So this one definitely speaks to folk horror.
Oh yeah.
This is a monstrous mother of sorts, kind of, and I've been like a little bit more pronounced in my figures in a space. And so she's kind of in this like swamp-like space, and she's definitely got these like well, we could say Orlockian fingers.
I was just gonna say this is like Nosferatu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh yeah, see there was, and this you did this when you after you saw that or before?
After, but I mean, I've been like I've done it while I've been, you know, researching these movies, revisiting folk horror, and also I've been reading the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is a lot about the wild woman. And so I'm definitely thinking about the wild woman.
That's a great book.
We
discussed that book before. I think it's from. Yeah, that's fantastic.
This is another totally different kind of style here, with a lot of references to more like Byzantine imagery of the Madonna with child, but using gold leaf again, using really like literal representations of cranberries.
Wow. I like the green. So this is the green. Yeah.
Yeah, the green comes from like representations of a cranberry vine.
Yes.
Like that's what the cranberry vine actually looks like. So here's the painting I'm working on right now, and I'm like in the very finishing stages of it.
I should say it's really an honor and it's kind of a privilege, right? To actually look at things while they're being done by so this is thank you. This is
yeah, absolutely.
This is really a big deal. Now this is kind of in the process, right?
Yeah, I'm in the finishing stages. I'm like doing very last kind of touch-ups right now, but I feel like I finally found the full composition is there. Yeah. And it's really like it's like these three figures that are enmeshed in these abstract forms. And I use the cranberry, you know, I've got this image transfer of a cranberry that I've like kind of painted over for both like a stand-in for the mother's pregnant belly, maybe, for a child's belly. And then I also incorporated a friend of ours, a physicist friend of my husband, recently sent me a paper about the physics of cranberries, like the physics of how we harvest cranberries. And so I actually took some of those diagrams about like, this is about how cranberries float, and this one is about how they come together in, you know, when they're floating. And so there's different like kind of physics diagrams in the
Alex, the child looking up, look at that child looking up, the expression on that face.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Looking up and all, it's just so much.
That's my son.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was referencing a photo of my son Netto.
Okay. Netto, the newest.
Yeah. I think of this whole piece as very much to do with like the cranberries that I grew up with, but and then also like just the physics of between bodies, between berries and between bodies. So there's a lot of like motion, and again, I'm using the like variegated gold leaf again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of layers.
There are. I mean, that's really. Do you think about cranberries in New England every day at least once? Is it always with you, even though you're in where you are?
Yeah, I think it's like just always with me. You know, like I did last night. I was meeting with my book club because I'm reading The Women Who Run with the Wolves in a book club of other mothers. And we did a meditation where our leader asked us, you know, to picture what is going home into ourselves, what's going home to our soul. And it was like the smell of like fresh cranberries and harvest time, and then just like myself as an artist and a mother. These things are so core to my being that I don't think I have to like actively think about them, but they're just part of me. And I didn't know how much a part of me they were until I was out of that situation, you know? And until I lost my dad when I was pretty young. It was right after college.
Yeah.
And he's represented by cranberries in so many ways, you know? So yeah.
You learn, you always knew it was part of your being, but it's made now because you're in California, you're in a different.
Yeah, I think like that sense of like absence from that.
Yeah.
But also I think it's because of my motherhood journey being so I've had infertility. So these ideas, just the word fertility is so heavy in terms of agriculture. And so it brought back so much of the language. Yeah. It brought back a lot of
kind of a strange question, because I feel you might know more about this. I talked about The Witch. That one of the things that struck me about that movie is for lack of a better word, the fanaticism of all the characters, not just the father and husband, but the daughter and everybody has so many opinions and so many beliefs, and they die for them. You know what I mean? The severity. Do you feel that the arguments in that picture and the kind of the claustrophobic feeling of the theology, and do you feel that there's something that, I don't know, is part of New England history? Is there something that's uniquely, you think, New England about that, or Massachusetts about that, or that you think, or at least at that time? Or
I think definitely, especially colonialism. I think especially anywhere where land is being forcefully taken over. And both like kind of the political problems of that, but also the sense of the unknown again. I think, but the whole reason they're there is because of their beliefs, right? Because they needed to leave England.
Yeah.
And, so I think New England is special in that way, that it is really rich with that fraught history, the problems of it, and it being like Plymouth is called the hometown of America. You know, like it is
the Rock.
Yeah, the Rock. Yeah, when everyone came to our wedding was in Plymouth. You know, that's what everyone went to go do, is to go see Plymouth Rock.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really. I just wondered about that watching The Witch, because I thought it really, because the film, you can't escape it. It's like 90 minutes, 2 hours. In a way, that picture is hearing people having religious arguments in a way for 2 hours. It's amazing to see that represented in a film. You know, so
yeah, and like as someone who did not grow up religious at all, I think sometimes it's hard for me. Like I totally tune out because I'm so not used to that language. Like I didn't grow up listening to verses or reading the Bible or any of that. I think it was only on subsequent watches that I was able to like dig deeper into that stuff, you know, because I think it is interesting for sure.
I don't know if you've seen Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev.
No.
One of the greatest movies ever made. Everybody should see Andrei Rublev.
Well, wait, Tarkovsky, did he do, what else did he do?
He didn't do that many movies. So The Sacrifice, Nostalgia, Stalker.
Stalker. Yeah, I saw Stalker, and my husband loved Stalker, and he wants to watch way more of his movies. So, okay, what's it called?
Well, Andrei Rublev is the journey of a painter, an icon painter, and a monk. But there's a moment, and this is a movie from the early 60s, 62, 63, somewhere in there. Maybe a little later, maybe it's 65. where the main character, Andrei Rublev, comes across a pre-Christian, naked woman, pre-Christian ritual.
Okay.
And Andrei Tarkovsky was a Christian, but he was Orthodox Christian, which is a particular kind, a particular sect. He was also studying Buddhism at the end of his life and was learning to read Japanese, and very brilliant man. But you get a sense in Andrei Rublev, and this is kind of a big deal in the 60s because this just wasn't done. It's a big deal because he's making this film in an atheistic country, a materialist, communist, Marxist-Leninist country, the Soviet Union. Not only is he making a movie celebrating a Christian artist, but there's this scene in the woods where Rublev looks at this bygone ritual, and it's not depicted judgmentally or pejoratively. It's depicted as just something of interest or something of beauty. It's really, so is that, and then you think a little bit of The Witch, The Witch made me think of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's come across something like that. So I'm wondering if Eggers, I'm sure, I know Eggers has seen, most people have seen Andrei Rublev, so I know he knows that film. I'm sure he's referencing that in The Witch, right? Coming across something in the woods. It's something in the woods. You probably would see something.
Yeah.
The whole question of, what is it in the woods, and then the woods are in Hamnet.
Yeah. Oh my God. The woods in Hamnet are just enchanting. And the thing in Hamnet that I loved was her birth in the woods.
Oh,
and I kind of wish they had shown more of the actual birth but I know that was like a choice. It was like kind of like she goes into the woods.
Yeah.
And then she ends, and then they find her and she's with the baby. But
you feel you were cheated because you want it to be like your artwork.
Yeah, exactly. I want the gruesome details. Yes.
I was thinking about you while watching Hamlet. I was thinking, boy, Alex would think this is a cop-out.
Yeah, exact words. I think I turned to my husband and I said that was a cop-out, like but it at least had the imagery. It had like that huge tree that had like a hole in it. So it was like the tree itself was like a portal. Yeah. And the cinematography of like her in that red dress.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Being in labor amongst all this greenery was just, there's those complementary colors, so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And having this free birth in the woods and completely unattended is very special. Yeah. But then later we do see a birth scene, a more harrowing birth scene, which was very, fraught in its own ways. But I think just that feeling that Chloe Zhao created with that forest was so magical and really built the character of Agnes like really nicely, I thought.
Well, she's is I guess kind of, she's friends with Malik, I think, and they
that makes sense.
They talk to each other, which is, I don't. That's got to be an influence on her sense of herself as a filmmaker, and of course, Malik loved Tarkovsky.
Okay,
yes, that's a thing. So, but she's everything is just so in that film. Again, I described it as, pure is not the best word, but there's a transparency in Hamnet. It's like a transparent beauty, a transparent approachability.
Mm-hmm.
The movie Hamnet makes you want to be in the woods. You feel at home in the woods in that picture. Which is one way to look at the woods, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's my way to look at the woods if I think about my upbringing, but it's
Yeah.
also, just so in contrast to the folk horror woods. So that's interesting that you bring that up too.
Well, yeah, that's exhibit A in my, when I was trying to say that they're opposite, I was trying to say,
Yeah.
You said, look here, there's these similarities, and that's true, there's similarities. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, there's often the feeling of a thing, Nosferatu is missing all of the things that grew up in watching Dracula movies. What's so much about the character of Dracula. And the Dracula is a dashing man in an evening suit, some form of dress suit. We call it a tux, a tuxedo, your tailcoat. It's not a disfigured creature with pus and with an awful voice. I mean, it changes everything. If you make it like that, it changes everything. It's a very different interpretation of that story.
I don't know. I thought the voice was very effective. But it's so interesting that it rubbed you the wrong way.
It's supposed to be. No one. I mean, yeah.
It's supposed to. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I am not as well versed in the whole oeuvre of Dracula films. Like I didn't see Werner Herzog's Nosferatu.
Oh wow.
So I need to see that. Yeah, you like that? Should I watch that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I haven't seen Coppola's Dracula either.
Oh.
So I need
my girlfriend worked on that.
Oh wow.
Well, she did what she did. She worked on the sets and in the she worked on that picture.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That was a lot went into that production. That's it's Coppola movie. He's not gonna
hold back.
I forget who was in that. Who played? Was it Christian Bale? Who was the?
I don't think so.
No, Keanu Reeves, right, was in it. I know that.
It was Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman, that's right, Gary Oldman. Yeah.
And yeah, Keanu played Thomas. Yeah. Yeah.
Winona Ryder.
Right.
Yeah. It's a different. Yeah.
But I mean, witch movies too. That's so cool that you're friends with Anna Biller because I love The Love Witch.
Yeah.
I would like to rewatch that one because that would be good revisit.
I mean, that's a really that movie has a lot in it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot in it.
Will you have her on the show?
One day maybe. I don't know.
You should.
I mean, that's a Technicolor movie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so different than these Eggers films, that's another thing is I actually don't like the visuals of Eggers films at all. Everything's desaturated. It's like a black and white. I would describe it as a color movie and a black and white movie made in color. Is how I describe it.
Yes, and I think that's another way that he gets me though, because I think one of my biggest pet peeves with painters is when they overuse color, when there's too much color in a piece and they haven't figured out how to enmesh or mix colors properly. Just some painters are not very good colorists, and I say this. So I use a lot of the time. My palette is what I would call a limited palette. Where I'm using very specific colors and only those colors. Judging from the works behind me, maybe it doesn't look that way, but it's like I am very, very intentional with the colors that I choose to use, and I do not. Actually, this is something I've been criticized for, is that maybe I should use a bigger spectrum of colors, but I think it's better to have control and over the relative relationships between each color than to just put it all out there like it's vomit, and I think that it can look too overdone when there's too much color.
The difference, so the reason again, I said this earlier, the reason why Eggers is doing things that were done in the 70s, working with underlighting. But those movies did it correctly. That's it. Well, that's a technology thing. So the flaws of the newer film technologies, I think, are coming through when you have this kind of. But that's just personal taste. I mean, it makes his films look a lot like Sweeney Todd, for example. You know, it's always the go-to for Hollywood. When Hollywood does a movie set in the 1860s, it looks like the films we're discussing today.
Yeah,
like a black and white film in color.
Right.
They don't go black and white. It's the way that parts of Oppenheimer. I'm just thinking that maybe it's these new digital. Maybe it's the way the cameras shoot things, and it's a different. It's not like the way Gordon Willis would shoot something, or you know, or McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I mean, that's a dark film. Zygmunt, you know, the DP on that, but it's in color. But you see, there's colors in that. It's not desaturated in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Film is very sensitive, you know, when you use different cameras and you set them up, but you use the same technique that you would have used in another technology, it won't look the same. It just won't. I don't think. Right. You know. But that's just where, you know, that's just the way it is. You use what's available and what.
Yeah.
I mean, it matters and it doesn't matter, you know. If it's important to you, it matters.
Oh yeah, I think it matters for sure.
No, it might not matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's when I, you know, it's sort of. I'm not saying that when I'm saying. So when I say it doesn't matter, I'm not talking about the question of the visual. I'm talking about digital, film, tripod, handheld, these kinds of.
Yeah, I have no knowledge of what the difference is between all of those. Obviously, though, they do have like a huge effect on me. I just don't understand. I don't know the anatomy of like the inner workings of film versus digital versus hand. You know, I can understand handheld versus, you know, not, and all of that, but I think that these are little elements, these are little choices that are made in filmmaking that all add up to something much greater. And that's where it's so different from painting for me, because it's like painting is made by an individual making all these choices, whereas films are so collaborative and there's so many different forces coming together to make films. And that's what's like awe-inspiring to me, because it's like somehow still the singular vision of that one person comes through, of Robert Eggers or Terrence Malick or Chloe Zhao, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So it's cool. That's why I love discussing these with you. I think it's we can really get into.
This is a really enjoyable episode. I'm just wondering, we're going to talk about in the future, but we have to wait for you to see it.
Yeah, gotta wait to see it.
About the new Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I would love to talk about that in relation to The Monstrous Feminine, which is a huge interest of mine. And, you know, like thinking about that new painting, this one.
Oh, yeah.
Very much in conversation with that. And it's interesting, like already the reviews are very polarized, it seems.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's been criticized, or it's.
Yeah, whereas The Lost Daughter was not polarizing. I think it was pretty well received.
Is it because of the fantastical element, or I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the same reasons as Nosferatu, you know, like that it's a story that's already been done, you know, and you know, that's something we didn't touch on actually, is what did you think of GDT's Frankenstein?
I strongly disliked it.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere between hatred and dislike. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it because it's Frankenstein, but there are so many issues. I thought it's just like, it's too bad it couldn't have been better. But
I don't like that filmmaker. What has he done anything that I've liked? I'm trying to think.
Have you seen Mama? I really
It's okay.
liked.
It's okay.
I like Mama.
Yeah, I have, there's a lot of movies I don't like.
Pan's Labyrinth. Did you like that one?
I strongly dislike Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay.
Didn't it win an award, or?
I don't know.
One of the films won an Oscar, didn't it? Was it Water or?
Oh, The Shape of Water. I hated that one.
I hated that too. So yeah,
yeah.
That's
Yeah, interesting. Well, I look forward to discussing.
Yeah, but we have to wait. We have to wait for you to watch it, right? Because you have.
Yes. Yeah, I can't discuss it without seeing.
Oh, but you're not able to watch it yet, right? Because it hasn't.
Oh yeah, because I don't go to the theater. I know it's so bad, but I just.
Yeah.
My life right now, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love watching things at home. We have a nice big TV. I love being able to pause things and take pictures of my screen and just soak up,
Alex, I love talking with you about these things. This is a real treat. And is there anything you want to say before we conclude that's on your consciousness now, or that you want to get out there before we say goodbye? Or
I don't think so. I just think I hope I've made somewhat of a case for folk horror in general too. Something I didn't mention is there's a great documentary about folk horror. It's called Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched. Have you seen it?
No.
It's really great, and it goes over the history of folk horror, all the different kind of tropes. So there's a segment on witch. There's a segment on America. There's a segment on the UK. And like films like Midsummer definitely come into the conversation here.
Boy, that's that in Eddington.
Oh, I hated Eddington.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, Eddington wasn't that great.
Yeah. Whereas Midsummer was just such a home run, so amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I think if you watch that documentary, let me know what you think, because it's great. It's great visuals too, because there's little clips of so many films in that. So.
Well, thank you, Alex, and
thank you.
And to be continued.
Yes,
thanks
absolutely.
For the generosity of time.
Yeah, no, thank you. I loved it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Bye.